Welcome to Modern Musings, conversations with the maiden, mother, and crone, looking at ourselves and the world through the lens of the 21st century. Hello, I'm Amber Garvin, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Kristen Hessler and Cindy Murray.
Hi.
And today we are back with a very interesting topic. Y'all stop laughing at me.
No, I was laughing at me because I was over here waving when I said hi.
But no one can see her.
But nobody can see me. I don't know why I did that.
Well, you know, I should have put this like up there so they could have. Oh,
that's okay.
Because people are getting bored just looking at me. Okay. Then again, I saw somebody today, like she was on live and she was playing with her dog, and people were watching it.
Yeah.
Because people watch anybody doing anything.
Yeah.
People like scroll through and watch for like 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I guess I should premise this podcast with we are live on TikTok. This is our second time going live on TikTok. First time with our Modern Musings account.
Yeah.
But we are currently live on TikTok on our Modern Musings account.
Which by the time you hear this, it will have already passed.
Oh yeah, way past. But so today we have a pretty interesting topic, and I know we like to talk about psychological things, personality things. We did a podcast a while back about Myers-Briggs, the 12 personality types.
Did we?
Didn't we? We did talk about Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
We've talked about. I didn't think we did a whole podcast on it.
Yeah, we did.
We did Garner's intelligence.
Oh, we did Garner's intelligence. We talked about Myers-Briggs. We've talked about Jung. We've talked about Eckhart Tolle,
shadow work.
Yes, so we talk
about a lot of
we talk a lot about these types of things. So this week we are talking about the Enneagram of personality, which is a little bit different. And I'll let y'all. It's a model of the human psyche, understood as 9 interconnected personality types. And I actually bought this book. I found it, oh my goodness, at the book rack in Lubbock.
Wow.
So this was when I was 18.
Yeah.
So that was like 22 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Personality Types, Using the Enneagram for Self-Discovery by Don Richard Rizzo. And here's the book.
It's interesting that you bought that so long ago. And people have talked about Enneagrams for a while, but they've really come into the spotlight in recent years. Like my therapist has talked about them. A lot of life coaches use them.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting how this model of personality type has kind of come to the forefront recently.
Yes. So I bought this book 22 years ago. And then recently, it has kind of come back into my mind, especially since I'm now going to grad school and learning different personality types in different ways for therapy, existential therapy, reality therapy, narrative therapy. And just within the last couple of years, I've picked up these other 2 books, the Enneagram and You by Gina Gomez.
Okay.
And then I want to say I picked this one up at 5 and below because, it's spiritual everything
really
everywhere.
They have cool stuff there.
Enneagram Empowerment. Discover your personality type and unlock your potential by Laura. Oh my gosh, I can't read this. Miltenberger. And actually, we all three of us took, before we posted this podcast, we all three took the test in this book, the one by Laura Miltenberger. We all answered the questions.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm probably butchering the name. We all answered the questions, and we all took the test to find out what personality type ours is. And a little bit of a backstory. There are 9 personality types. Type 1 is the reformer, which is rational, principled, orderly, perfectionistic. Type 2 is the helper, caring, generous, possessive, manipulative. Type 3 is the status seeker, self-assured, competitive, narcissistic, and hostile. Type 4 is the artist, creative, intuitive, introverted, depressive. Type 5 is the thinker, perceptive, analytic, eccentric, paranoid. Type 6 is the loyalist, likable, dutiful, dependent, masochistic. Type 7 is the generalist, accomplished, impulsive, excessive, manic. Type 8 is the leader, self-confident, forceful, dominating, combative. Type 9 is the peacemaker, receptive, reassuring, passive, and neglectful. That's really interesting. Neglectful is part of the peacemaker.
Yeah, that is.
So we all three took this test. And do either of y'all want to guess what mine is?
Well, I mean, it's kind of unfair because we talked about it.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, we did talk about it a little
just
bit.
a little bit. So,
Well, it's funny because we went out to dinner before this, and Kristen and I were talking about it before we even took the test.
Oh,
and I
was
was
like placing bets based on.
Well,
Yeah,
and I had taken the test before and got one thing, and then I took a test on Truist on my phone while we were at dinner tonight and got something different, which surprised me. But then when we came back, I took the test in your book and got the results I got the first time I took the test. So
that's really interesting, which I think that if you take the test multiple times, then you get different results, kind of like Myers-Briggs.
I think it's because of the way the questions are phrased sometimes. And if you if you don't just go with your gut instinct and answer it right off, just boom, answer it. If you overthink it, sometimes you may answer a little differently than your instinct tells you to.
Oh, that's for sure, because one of the very first question on the quiz that we took was, are you a perfectionist? And you have to rate it from 0, meaning you don't believe that you are a perfectionist, to 5, where you are absolutely a perfectionist. And I was telling Kristen that I rated it 0 because I don't believe that I'm a perfectionist. And she said, just by you saying that you are not a perfectionist means that you are somewhat of a perfectionist.
Oh, because I was alluding to the fact that you were talking about the things that you do that you're not a perfectionist.
Yeah, you're not a perfectionist.
Said, but what
because
about
you
the
avoid,
things that you don't?
You avoid doing things because you're afraid you can't do them.
Exactly. So, and then I got to thinking, after I counted all this up and talking to Kristen about it, I was sitting there thinking, well, maybe my score is off because I answered it the wrong way. But before we even took the test and we were looking at the different personality types, which this is a book that I hadn't cracked open in a really long time. And we were looking at the personality types, and I said to Kristen, I bet that I am a 7, a generalist. And that was exactly what my result was.
Mm-hmm.
That it says accomplished, impulsive, excessive, and manic. And I am all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
just by looking at these adjectives behind it, I am definitely all of those things. And it was funny because Kristen was looking in the book and I had highlighted that as well when I was reading the book. So even back then, when I first read this book about 20 years ago,
you felt that.
I felt that about myself.
Right. And actually, I was reading the negative sides to the 7, and I was like, wow, that is so me. Like, all of my biggest weaknesses were the things in the 7. Like, all of the things that I got myself into trouble were because of those, like, character flaws.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I was like, wow, that, like, kind of bundles me up in it, you know, into, like, this little box with a bow on top.
So you were leaned towards generalist also?
I thought.
Oh,
but I think it was just the negative aspects really resonated with me because they were very familiar to me.
Okay.
In some of the negative behaviors that I have.
Right.
So, you know, after taking the test, then I was like, I mean, some of the other ones actually I scored higher in. So I was just kind of like mid-range on that one.
Okay.
So what was your high score then?
My highest was artist,
which I could say is absolutely true.
On the questions, I felt like I was just like through and through on the questions. It asked 5 questions, and on those, I felt wholeheartedly like I identified with those to the fullest. And maybe had other quizzes might have had different questions. I might not have identified with them as much. Because one of the things, like, for me, like when I see the artist, or, you know, I see that as like a professional, like it's a professional title, like doctor to me. Like I hold the title of artist in a very high regard, right?
Right.
Like I think of, like, you know,
but you are an artist.
Right. I know, but that's also like some of the other traits, like, you know, imposter syndrome and stuff like that.
Right.
Actually, one of the questions I believe was like fear of not being good enough. And that one resonated.
Sure.
So even though
that one did too,
I feel like an artist is like a title, you know, just like leader to me feels like a title. It's like a position.
Like, I think the title artist is kind of maybe a misnomer.
I know, and I think that's because I give it like a occupation.
And it is artist is a very specific
more of like
thing.
a feeling, but yes, it is a very specific thing.
I was thinking more along the lines of creative.
Right.
That creative would be a better title for that. Because
agree,
you can
100%.
think outside the box. And yes. So what were some of your other one? Did you have any that were kind of close to that? Or
I did. So I had like a 3-way tie for the next like scoring down, which was reformer and status seeker and leader.
Interesting.
So what were the numbers on those? The reformer is a 1. And then the leader is an 8, and then the status seeker
is a 3.
Is a 3. So your biggest was a 5.
A 4.
Oh,
a 4.
A 4. And then a 3. And then what was your other one?
A 1.
Okay.
And a 8.
Huh.
Because 1, 3, and 8 I tied.
Yeah.
My score.
Okay. And I'll explain what I was wanting to know on your top 3 here in a minute as we talk about it more. Cindy, what were your top ones?
Well, okay, so let me go back. Like I said, I've taken this before. And so when I took the one at the restaurant tonight, it told me that I was a 4. And I was really surprised that it didn't tell me what I had gotten before, because when I had taken the test before, I always came out pretty closely a 1 reformer and an 8, a leader. Those two scores were always like right side by side each other. And so those numbers, and I will say I took this on truist.com was where I took it. It would not show me my full score unless I paid the $30, and I said the heck with that. I'm not doing that. It led me on, letting me believe I could see the report or at least the numbers, but it would only tell me like one little brief paragraph and that I was a 4. So, and I did not feel it was very accurate. Maybe there was some 4 in me, but not totally. But when I took the one in your book that the two of you took, I got the score that I felt really represented who I feel like I am. My top score was reformer. And like I said, before, I've always taken it, when I've taken this test, I kind of balanced between reformer and leader, which is number 8. My number 2 position was a 3-way tie between a 4 of artist, a 5 thinker, and an 8 leader. And when I saw that, then that made total sense to me, because I am kind of logic minded a lot, but I'm also a creative, type. And I tend to find myself in leadership positions a lot, along with the reformer part. So, you have the book in front of you, so you can do a little more explaining about what all those things are again, just to refresh everybody's memory. But I felt like that was pretty representative of who I was. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, we are talking about the 9 personality types of the Enneagram, which is interesting because there are 9, but then these 9 are grouped in what are called triads.
Oh.
So they're grouped in 3 triads, which there is the thinking group, which is 5, 6, and 7. The thinking group, 5, 6, and 7, the thinker, the loyalist, and the generalist. The feeling group, which is 2, 3, and 4, the helper, the status seeker, and the artist, and then the instinct group, which is 8, 9, and 1, the leader, the peacemaker, and the reformer. And so when you figure out your main personality type, which means that, so say my main personality type is the generalist, then it is the center of what is called the wings.
Okay.
Which is mine is a 7. So my wings, that's the numbers on either side of you, which would be a 6 and an 8. So I am in the center between a loyalist and a leader. The generalist is between a loyalist and a leader. And these, of course, are like the old school original names by Don Richard Rizzo of these personality types. Actually, if you go on the EnneagramInstitute.com, which was founded by him, by the way, the names have changed quite a bit over the years, where number 1 is still called the reformer. Number 2 still called the helper. Number 3 is called the achiever instead of the status seeker.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Number 4 is called the individualist
Ah,
instead of the
That
artist.
makes a lot more sense too.
And when we were talking about this earlier, and you were talking about artist or whatever, I wanted to mention that, but then we moved on. But yeah, I wanted to
That's
let you know
interesting.
that. And then 5 is called the investigator instead of the thinker.
Oh, okay.
6 is still called the loyalist.
Mm-hmm.
And then 7, which is interesting, which I like this a lot more, instead of the generalist, it's called the enthusiast.
Oh.
Which we talked about, generalist like is kind of like a generally everything.
Jack of
like
all trades, yeah.
And that is what I consider myself anyway, so I guess I am the perfect generalist.
You get enthusiastic about a lot of things.
I do.
Right?
But yes, the generalist is definitely kind of a jack of all trades, which I consider myself because I have a lot of hobbies and a lot of interest. And just so you know, like we all do have a lot of hobbies and interest. And I recently bought my very first Cricut.
Yay!
And Cindy says to me, she goes, "Are you finally going to start scrapbooking?" And I'm like, "Yeah, probably." But I've always wanted one, so I have one in case I want to scrapbook.
And you can use it for your classroom too, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool.
That was my
Okay.
main reason.
So
for mine.
back on track. You were listing off the new names. Yes.
So so
You got
number
2 more.
8, ADHD.
Yes.
Number 8,
Squirrel.
it's called the leader on here. It's called the Challenger,
Oh.
the updated version.
Oh.
Oh.
Remember I was
And-
saying there's different reasons why people want to be leaders. Some people want to be leaders to help people, and some people want to challenge the boundaries.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Challenger.
And then number 9 is still called the Peacemaker. And I want to say that just like on the website, in each one of these books, like the names are different for each thing. Like we have for number 2 in this other book, we have, it's called the Nurturer, and then the Achiever instead of the Status Seeker. The instead of artist, it's called the Individualist or the Romantic. And then
that's where I saw it in the other book. It was called The Romantic.
Mm-hmm.
And then instead of the Loyalist, it's called the Skeptic.
Oh, that's like kind of different.
Yeah, and then instead of Generalist, it's called the Enthusiast. So instead of the Peacemaker, it's the Mediator. So it's really on like whoever's book you read about the subject.
Well, and
there are
according to
different
Truist, there is no official test for the Enneagram.
things. No.
So it's like kind of just up to whoever's
Mhm.
doing it.
So you were talking about wings earlier.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so so the wings are what you consider like your main personality, the 2 around you on the Enneagram circle. So like I said, I'm a 7, so 6 and 8 would be my wings. And
Okay, so so like for me, I'm a reformer, a number 1. So 2 and 9 would be the ones around me.
yeah, 2 and 9 would
But
be
those
your
are
wings.
2 of my lowest scores.
That's yeah.
So what does that mean by wings, though? Like,
Okay, so
Is it like each
you have like
type
some
bleeds
similarity
into-
traits.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
you
Okay.
have 2 adjacent types next to you.
Well, one of them was
They're
my
called
next
your-
highest score.
Yeah, they're called your wings, which one of them was also my next highest score.
Let's see, mine were my next lowest and the next lowest after that. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so these 2 types influence your type.
Okay.
So these wings and their ideas influence you.
Okay.
So say if I'm a 7, if I look at the loyalist, I'm also, well, gosh, they could influence you good or bad, because I don't feel
That's
like
what I was thinking. Maybe the negative things you like are averted to them.
Okay, maybe. I
Or
don't know.
you are
Well,
a
see, like,
reformer
okay,
because you don't appreciate the peacemaker.
well, or maybe I'm a reformer because by having rules, it creates peace if everybody follows the rules. But I'm also not. I'm not a very good helper. I'm not a good peacemaker. I'm not a very good helper either. So I don't know.
So I guess like it influences you good or bad, but it doesn't change your core type.
Okay.
But those are your influences around you, and that's a very kind of like existential type thing. It's not in some circles. Some think of it that way, and then other circles they don't think of it that way. But that's just kind of like an idea that has to do with the surrounding types on the Enneagram circle.
Okay. Now, you were talking about the little triad of that they come in little groups, but you were asking us what our other things were.
Oh yeah, because I was trying to figure out like what you were talking about is like do your other numbers, are your other numbers your wings?
Oh, okay.
Kind of like Kristen says. So like I'm a 7 and I feel like a 6, which is on one wing, is kind of like not me, but then 8 on my other side is like I kind of lean towards that. So it could be like the good and bad concept on the wing.
Okay. Well, I had two of them that wound up in the gut, or what did you call it?
On the triad.
The triad.
Yeah.
Yes. I had 2
8,
of
9,
them.
and 1.
Yeah.
On the gut
I
instinct.
have the 1 and the 8 are both 2 of my highest numbers, but then my other 2 highest numbers were 1 each in the emotional and thinking. So,
yeah,
I thought that was kind of interesting.
See, like I thought that. See, my top 3 were 7, 8, and 9. So we have 7 in the intellectual, and then 8 and 9 also in the gut.
Right.
In the gut instinct, which is interesting. And I was sitting here thinking, when I was thinking about it, that everybody, like a well-rounded person, would have 1 in each, right?
Right.
Possibly, yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe we're kind of off kilter. We're kind of like our wings are broken. I'm just kidding.
I don't know enough about all of this stuff to to even venture to guess.
Well, that's just like a weird random thought.
Yeah,
that popped into my brain.
I think it really, like I said, I think it. I could take this test again from a different source and probably have some. Maybe my high score would still be in the same one, or would be one of those 4, but maybe some of the other ones would flesh out a little bit differently, just depending on how the questions were asked. Because, like I said, I think if you stop and think about some of the questions and you use some logic on the questions, you might answer them a little bit differently than if you just go with your gut instinct and, your first and answer it. And again, also, you were answering the questions on a scale of 0 to 5, and I was answering on a 1 to 5.
Me too,
So a 1 being the lowest,
Mm-hmm.
least likely, and 3 being, right in the middle. I don't know if I am or not. And then 5 being affirmative. Yes, that describes me. And I had quite a few 5s and 4s in a lot of the categories, and very few 1s. So
right.
I thought that was kind of
me
interesting.
too. I had like really high scores. And I also need to go back and think about some of them, like the one that's like a perfectionist. Like I put a 5 on there because I'm really hard on myself, but
I put a 0.
So here's the thing. I was thinking about that because I was like, well, you went one extreme and I went the other, but am I really extreme?
Are you so extreme? Yeah, I know.
I was like, I would
said
think a person with a 5 might actually be a perfectionist to the point that they do harm to themselves or others.
Or they can't
function.
They can't function, or they can't complete a
Yeah.
project because they're such a perfectionist.
Right.
So yeah, I thought of that too.
And I was
but
like,
I
maybe
answered
should,
5
like,
on it out of
take
instinct.
that score
Boom.
down a little bit. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So it's funny how that, and one of them really caught me up. There was one that was like, I'm afraid of something.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which one was that?
Let me go back to the test. Ooh. Do you remember which one it was?
It was on the first page.
Yeah, like the perfectionist one really yeah, it's
Is that the first one on the Reformer?
yeah, like these are on Reformer. Like it was, I'm afraid that I'm not good enough. That was one of the questions.
Yes. And you
Okay.
answered, I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
But then we had a discussion about what there's
Right.
levels of fear.
Right. And I was
Yeah.
like, I don't think I'm afraid. I think I just know
Right.
that there are times when I'm not good enough. I'm not shaking in my bones because there's
But not all
true
fear is-
fear that
Yeah, that's true.
I know, but
and
so which question was that on the Reformer? What number was that one?
that was the fourth question.
Right,
on
and
the
see, and
Reformer.
I ended up just going, I'm overthinking this. I'm being too much of a 5 perfectionist, and then I just wrote a 5.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, well, maybe I'm not a reformer, because now I think about it, like, I wrote a 5 for perfectionist. Maybe I'm not that bad of a perfectionist. Maybe I'm like a 3 or a 4, right? If a 0 is included.
Right.
Right? And then on that one, I'm not really afraid. I just know, and there's some things I'm working through about being a perfectionist, and I'm learning to let go.
Yeah, and that's true too for me.
And also with not being good enough and like that imposter syndrome. So maybe I could give myself a little bit of grace there and give myself like a 3 or a 4.
There were some other questions.
I gave myself a 5.
There
on
were
that
some
one,
other
too.
questions. I don't remember.
Right.
I don't have the questions in front of me, but there were some other questions there where I answered them based on how I am now, but those questions have I would not have
Changed.
answered. They've changed over time, and some of them I answered them based on how I've quote unquote always been, but not how I am, how I've grown. So because I have done a lot of changing and growing over the last few years, and we've talked about our one little word before. And I've chosen some kind of challenging words over the last few years, like now and light and balance for this year. And those words, working with those words, has changed the way I react to my environment and changed the way I perceive things. And so Kristen talks about Getmo, good enough to move on. And so, perfectionism is a problem with me. And sometimes it is so, it's paralyzing almost, because when I first started scrapbooking, here's a perfect example. I wanted to scrapbook. I had been collecting pictures and scrapbook papers and stickers and all this stuff, and I hadn't put anything down on a paper until a friend of mine took me to a Creative Memories crop party, and the idea, I was sitting there saying, I really want to do this, but I'm afraid. They call it white paper syndrome, like with the people writing an essay or anything. You're afraid to make a mark on the paper because you don't want to write a word down that's not perfect. And you sit there and you stare at this blank piece of paper for the longest time because you're immobilized by your fear of doing it wrong. And that's that perfectionism thing. And sometimes the best cure for that is just to stick a
I literally was saying
Mess
that.
the
Remember
paper.
the day? Remember on
make a mess.
the other day? Literally,
Just
actually, it
make a
was
mess on the
yesterday.
piece of paper.
I was like, the best way for me to get into my creative juices is to just put some gesso
On a piece of paper.
on paper. I
Yes.
was literally
Yeah.
gessoing paper,
Right.
and then because it's just the act of moving the paintbrush around,
And
then I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna add this color now." And then I was
Yes.
painting, and then I painted like a bunch of stuff.
and that has been a hard
Good.
thing for me to move into, because like I said, I've been
As a writer,
I
me too.
s-
Like
and writing
getting,
as well.
getting off the ground and
Yeah.
getting published or whatever. It's just you just got to start typing. And
Yes,
that's what I
yes.
tell my
You
students.
can edit
as well.
yourself umpteen times,
Yeah,
but just
you
do it.
You just have to start typing. That's what I tell
Yeah.
my students when they see these like huge papers ahead of them. And like the last month in my college class, I wrote an 18-page paper every week.
Yeah.
And it's such a daunting thing. I mean, of course, you don't think that it's going to turn out to be 18 pages when you start.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But then like you just have to start typing, you just have to start writing, you just have to start putting paint
it's like
on the paper.
Like like writing the blog every week, we do same thing, I open up the software and I just put my first thought down, and then I start working around that. But that's back to that point. I definitely am that perfectionist, but over time I've also learned coping mechanisms or whatever that make me maybe not so much a 5 anymore, because I was literally paralyzed by the fear of committing those cropping those pictures down and cutting that beautiful paper and making it, gluing something down, because once it's down, it's down,
So was your first instinct, like in an all or nothing kind of way, was your first instinct to put a 5?
Yeah.
Because you have been a
Yes.
perfectionist in the past.
Yes, it
but
was.
you might not be one now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That was exactly my thought process there.
I did the same thing.
And-
And I did the opposite of that, of like, oh, I'm never a perfectionist. Look at my house.
Right.
Even though in the back of my mind, it's
But
always
see-
bothering me.
But see, when I'm looking at my house, and if people on the Instagram can see behind you, it actually looks pretty neat because your head is covering
TikTok.
up all the mess. But there's some piles everywhere in here, and and it's kind of messy. It really is kind of messy if you look at it closely. But a lot of that is because of my perfectionism. I don't want to put it away until I find the perfect place for it. And there's not a perfect place for it. So it just sits there and I look at it until I find the perfect way to put it away.
Yeah, I'm the same way. So maybe like I said, we're all admitting this, that maybe we need to go back and take the test and take a little bit of time and reevaluate.
Did you score on Peacemaker?
Did I score on?
Would you score on Peacemaker? Number 9.
Number 9. That was my second highest one, I believe.
So
Wow.
that's the Peacemaker is the one that's just like not confrontational.
Yeah.
So and you're also that way with like your shadow work and stuff too.
Yeah, you don't confront yourself.
Yeah.
No, I'm
you're
very-
peacemaking with yourself so that the perfectionist can't have a say.
Right.
So the
You're-
other
you're-
part of you just goes, well, it's just not going to be
Right.
anything.
Let's psychoanalyze Amber today. I'm just kidding.
No, but I mean,
but it's true.
Peacemaker
No,
was
honestly, I am not disagreeing with you there.
But like I said, I have in the past been that perfectionist, reformer, whatever. But in a lot of ways, I have started letting a lot of those
reformed
things go.
reformer.
I'm a reformed reformer. There we go. So when I look at these other things, I'm like, I can see myself in little bits in a lot of these, but at the same time, I can see, like in the Peacemaker, I am not the peacemaker. I am not gonna try to soothe my own, whatever. I'm down with confronting what the issue is. Let's look at the issue. Let's take care of it,
Yeah, I'm the exact opposite of that, of like let's just avoid it and move on and always
Everybody
move
love
forward.
everybody.
Don't move to the fact everybody love everybody. Let's not commit to anything. I'm totally like that's totally me. Like I don't commit to anything. I don't commit to religion. I don't commit to a political party.
And
I don't
that was one
commit
of the
to a favorite
one
color.
of the questions was, do you let other people make decisions for you? And I'm like, yes, I do, because I don't want to make the decisions, but at the same time, I don't know. It's really weird.
Yeah. Well, it was are you afraid to make the wrong decision?
I am very much afraid, but see, that goes back to that perfectionist thing. I don't want to make the wrong decision, so I let other people make. I let somebody else make that mistake, and then I can criticize them for it.
See, I do that.
I told
too.
you.
Yeah.
I told you that was a bad idea. No.
Like I'll let my husband make a decision about something, and then I'll go back and I'll be like,
why'd you do that?
Yeah, why'd you make that decision? That's not the right decision. And he's like, well, then why didn't you? You know, I'm just like, well,
I can't even decide where to go for dinner. You notice that I had no input on dinner.
I know Ashley had to step up and be like, let's go to Chili's, which was very good, by the way. Dinner at Chili's.
I was I haven't been there in a long time. So yeah, I like this. I like looking at this. I would like to look at some books like those and
oh, for sure. And we will post the name of these
yeah.
books and the websites on our Heard It on the podcast. So if you're just tuning in for the first time, we don't just do a podcast. We do a blog and we keep a website, and then we're live on TikTok right now. So we have social media as well. And I have been getting better at posting TikTok videos.
Now, if we can just get her to post her blogs.
Hey, you know what?
Don't be a perfectionist.
Don't see that. Yeah, that's true. That is exactly it.
Just throw it out there.
Just throw it out there. And because like right now in my current grad school class, Kristen is my guinea pig. She, I have to mock interview her, or not really interview. She I'm
therapy, right?
Therapy, mock counseling, and so like I'm always hesitant about doing it and recording it every week. And Kristen is like, just do it. Just start talking.
Yeah,
you're being a perfectionist.
So
which
see,
is goes back to the ego.
You need to go back and look at those questions again.
Like, does this not really relate to Tolu now?
Oh, totally, yes. Yes, yeah.
It all relates. It all goes
Everything's
together.
Everything
It all
does.
It is all interconnected, and it all goes back to Tolu.
Everything.
And if you're just now tuning into the podcast, you will have to go back and listen to our book review.
Yeah, we did
podcast about Eckhart Tolle.
Was that season 2?
Season 2, yeah.
Yes.
There's
a New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
We spent several months doing an in-depth recording review of the book chapter,
right?
Yeah, multiple recordings, chapter by chapter, over the course of several months. Really a hard, deep look at that Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. I think it's one of our most popular series, actually, on the podcast. We are not
experts.
Yeah. I was going to say professionals, but
we're not perfectionists.
We're
professionals.
We are not.
Perfectionists.
We are not perfectionists in our podcast. This is one of the things that I have learned to just kind of. It's good enough to move on.
Yeah, true. So very true.
So you will hear us stumble over stuff, and we're not always well spoken. And
and if you catch us on the live on TikTok, you get all the bleepers.
Yes, you're getting all the
bleepers and bloopers.
You know what? We haven't really had any bleepers
It's
and
because
bloopers.
we're live.
Yeah, I know, right? We haven't
probably.
really had it this time. Like normally, we always do something weird, like the random wasp that showed up in the middle of one of
Yes.
our episodes.
Yes.
Or the laughing fest.
Oh my
Or
gosh!
like Amber has to re-record the greeting like
Multiple times. That
15
was the one I
times.
just edited this week. You know that I laughed so hard as I was editing that. I said that one is going to be the start of the blooper reel. That is the opening sequence to the
better
blooper
than
reel.
Chrome.
Yeah, it
It
was
was
Made
that-
made mother and Chrome.
Oh, she started with that. That's
Yeah.
what she
Oh,
started with, and then
again?
she just messed it up every time, like for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was
Got
hilarious.
our
We were laughing
Cindy
so
Hessler
hard.
and Kristen Murray. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I posted on our TikTok last week
That was one of the ones where
a
you
little
didn't-
bit of blooper that you recorded me
Yeah.
doing, and I tried
I think
to,
that was from that same episode. I think it was.
and then I like tried to bleep out because I cussed in
Oh,
it.
is that why it went?
Yeah, I was trying to bleep it out,
Oh.
and I bleeped it out at the wrong spot because
Oh.
I messed up or something, or I was half asleep when I was doing it. So,
I tried to figure out what was going on
so
with
it's
that when I
the
watched it, 'cause that
the
weird
bleep
noise.
or the weird noise comes right before I
Yeah.
cuss, and I'm like, well, it's not that noticeable, even though
She's
you
not
can
a
tell.
perfectionist.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not a perfectionist. If I was a perfectionist, I probably wouldn't have acne face, gray hair. I don't know.
No, that would be the status seeker achiever.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yep.
right.
Yep. I think. Maybe.
Yeah.
Totally.
Part of the artist also had things with like their personal appearance as
Oh, yeah.
well. Like
Yeah.
their clothes. Like
Oh, yeah,
expressing
because it's a
themselves and stuff, too.
self-expression. Yeah.
Mhm.
A form of self-expression. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you like in my
I totally
mind,
see
would,
that you're a 4.
Yeah.
I really do, because you've always been and thinking of it as an individualist
Yeah.
in
It made a
instead
lot
of
more
the,
sense. Yeah.
it does, because you were like goth. You were one of the first kids that I ever saw that was goth. I mean, like early school goth.
Mhm.
I don't,
Yeah.
and
Aside from like the people in the 80s.
right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right. You were. I mean, yeah.
I
Well,
was, like, bringing it
like
back.
small, Texas. Like when you think of
Everything
Texas,
comes
you
late
don't
to Texas.
you
yeah.
don't think of goth. It's like I didn't. I mean, I knew rock music or whatever, but it was
Right.
mostly classic rock, and
Well,
I didn't really discover more modern rock.
I think
music.
more of the goth kids, the early, like the 80s, that was like the punk scene,
Mhm.
and you were
Yeah.
far later than that when you were doing it. But there weren't that I could see a lot of other kids. You were very individualistic in your
Mhm.
in the way that you dressed and the way that you presented yourself.
And that's one thing that I did notice about you when we first met, Kristen. And really like only a couple of other people at our college really were gothy.
Mhm.
I mean, I kind of was, but it was more of like a country
I
gothy.
was gonna say country bumpkin goth.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
country. No,
Country
actually,
core.
I dressed more.
Like country bumpkin core.
Yeah, no, I really wasn't like back then. I really wasn't gothy per se. Yeah, I was more grunge. I was more
Oh, yeah.
like
Yeah.
stringy hair, baggy clothes, grunge, like dragging along the jeans hanging off of my
Uh-huh.
legs behind me. Very 90s grunge.
Yeah, they really didn't have like the fashion for everyone.
Well,
Yeah.
and I was, when I was in high school, I was the only girl at my whole high school that I know of that listened to Kiss or any kind of metal bands or anything like, rock and roll. I had one of my best friends and I both liked Rush, but it was the boys mostly that listened to that kind of music, The girls all listened to country or pop music, and and they
Yeah.
dressed in cute little mini skirts and
Well,
pink
Lubbock
and
was
purple.
very like a top 40 type thing too.
Yeah,
Like you could
yeah.
only like
Yeah,
find the most popular music on the
on the radio. Yeah, the stuff I listened to wasn't on the radio.
Yeah,
I mean, some of it was, but not really.
like I had to like go, and this was back at the very beginnings of LimeWire and the internet. Like I had to go seek out popular music
Mm-hmm.
on the internet and stuff like that to be able to get anything other than country music and classic rock where I
Yeah.
grew up.
Yeah. Well, and when I grew up, classic rock meant the Beach Boys. And I mean, we're talking
That
the
was
50s and 60s.
That was
Roy
one of the
Orbison.
first CDs I got from Columbia House.
The Beach Boys, Roy Orbison, Jan and Dean. That was classic rock when I was in school. So, yeah. And there was a channel for that. All right.
Well, guys, anything else? Any thoughts? All right. What are we talking about next week?
Well, I wanted to know now that you know what your personality type is, what do you do with that?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, so what basically what these books are for, and what this psychological thought is for, is it's more of a self exploration.
Mm-hmm.
So the three main ideas of learning your personality type, the Enneagram, is self-understanding, self-awareness, and self-development.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you know what your personality type is, you can read more about it, the good and the bad, and basically do shadow work.
Well, it makes sense because you can strengthen the things that are your superpower or whatever.
Oh, and then ask, why did I give myself a 5 on
right?
this?
And then also you can look at those negative aspects of that number and say, these are things I need to work on to not be so negative.
So so this first book that I bought is Using the Enneagram for Self-Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically breaks down all of the personality types, the good and the bad and the wings.
Okay.
And how they relate to you. Then this second book that I bought is Understanding Your Personality so it can transform your relationships with yourself and anybody else. So it's a different take on the Enneagram and learning more about yourself. And then this last book that I bought is it's basically empowerment to unlock your potential.
Okay. Yeah.
So I would say once you take the test, then that's when you start your shadow work and asking yourself why you asked those questions, as Kristen said, why you answered it that way. Mm-hmm. Maybe reevaluate and retake the test.
Yeah.
And then kind of research more about
what it means in your life. Yeah.
And so, like I said earlier in the podcast, if you don't want to go out and buy one of these books, and we will definitely link the books, you can go just check out the EnneagramInstitute.com.
Okay.
And it was founded by the guy that wrote this first book, Don Richard Rizzo.
Okay.
And there are definitely lots of explanations on the website. It's a very nice website. And then you can also contact them. You can also take more tests online. You can also buy merchandise. And then they also have events and workshops that you can do online for self-discovery and self-work on yourself. And it looks like if you want to attend an in-person event, They're going to be located in Charlotte, North Carolina. So if you're listening from North Carolina, you want to check that out. But then they also have online seminars and online events. So yeah, go check out the Institute's website. They have quite a bit of online events. Here's one, the Journey of Growth website. The 3 instincts, or the 3 subtypes, like I talked about. The triads. That's another workshop. The wisdom of the Enneagram. And all of these, it looks like, are via Zoom. The Journey of Growth. So they definitely have different kinds of events and classes that you can take if that would be something that you're interested in. And then other things that you can explore on their website. How the system works. And then, of course, a page on the different descriptions. And then relationship combinations. So if you have a significant other, like I should get Jason to take this test and see how those relationships work together. And then like misidentifications. And then Enneagram history. Let's see. So misidentifications is talking about people that have misidentified their type. Like 2s that are convinced they are 4s, 9s who thinks that they are 5s, and 3s that thinks that they are 1. So it's talking about you could have possibly misidentified your type, but then it also talks about how like people change over time. Like the same thing that we've talked about.
I can see that because, like I said, reading Eckhart Tolle, working with my one little word, those things have all changed me. And, I've worked hard to be less reactive, to, be less perfectionist, to do a lot of those things. So I can see where, any kind of shadow work you do or whatever would also possibly change your numbers. So, yeah.
Very much, very much. Okay, guys. Well, like I said, check out our website, check out our blog, and we will have these linked on our website. Check out our Facebook group, MMC Chat, and check out our social media. And Kristen, what are we talking about next week?
We're talking about the love of coffee. Woo-hoo! So it will all be for the love of coffee.
For the love of coffee. For the love of Dutch Bros. Just kidding. I'm holding a Dutch Bros.
Yeah. Like, this is not a paid advertisement.
It is not a paid advertisement.
It's just that I love Dutch Bros. Okay. Well, we will talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.